Welcome to the Discover Health podcast, where we explore the power of gut health, nutrition, and lifestyle to help you feel your best every day. I'm Dr. Josh Sharp, your guide on this journey to better digestion, more energy, and overall well-being. Each week, we'll dive into expert insights, practical tips, and real-life strategies to help you discover health. Ready to start discovering? Let's hit the trail. Well, welcome back to another episode of Discover Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Sharp, and today with me is a very special guest, my new friend, Harmeet Singh. I had the pleasure of meeting Harmeet in Boise, Idaho at a conference, and we hit it off really well. And I discovered really quickly, this guy knows some stuff. And we discussed mold, and right away I knew I need to have this guy on my podcast. So thank you so much for joining me today, Harmeet. A little bit about him. He has a background as a chemical engineer where he holds both bachelor's and master's in chemical engineering. He's worked in increasing roles and responsibilities with several chemical and petrochemical and upstream petroleum companies with a total of 20 years of industry experience. In his own health journey, he saw, get this, 43 different practitioners in various fields of medicine for his own health challenges, including Ayurvedic, traditional Chinese medicine, functional medicine, environmental medicine, homeopathy, biological dentistry, naturopaths, energy medicine, and foundational medicine. But then, after fully recovering from his own health challenges, he became passionate to get the required training and certifications to practice functional and foundational medicine himself and to help coach clients with similar pain points, similar health challenges related to their chronic illness. He's now a functional medicine health practitioner and board certified holistic health practitioner, and he helps clients find the triggers behind their chronic illness using detailed health history, advanced lab testing, blood work, food sensitivity panels, and muscle testing. This approach helps him to tailor protocols for targeted needs of any given client, and he uses nutrition, supplements, lifestyle changes to help address chronic health issues. He started practicing in 2024 virtually and has helped hundreds of clients around the world with chronic illness such as mold toxicity, heavy metal toxicity, Lyme and co-infections, gut dysbiosis, parasites, and EMF sensitivity. So thank you so much for joining me today, Harmeet.
Sure, Dr. Joshua, it's great to be here with you on this podcast, and we have an interesting topic, which is of personal interest to me and my family, and so I really appreciate you having me, come on board so that we can talk in detail through this.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here, and you're exactly right. Today we're going to discuss mold and mold illness, and it affects so many people in this country in particular, but all around the world. And it's one of those issues that I feel like is so often overlooked. It's one of those issues that's often missed. It's not considered by so many different types of practitioners. And so when you meet a practitioner who actually understands the issues that mold can cause, I make a mental note like, okay, this guy knows some stuff. And so I'm so thankful for you and your work. So let's start right at the beginning. What is mold? How does mold typically grow?
So mold is basically a type of fungi, okay, or fungus, okay, and it's part of nature. You find it everywhere, right? And it plays an important role in our ecosystem because its main purpose is to decay the organic matter, right? So that's what when you walk into the conventional side, of the practitioners, they say mold is everywhere. So and it get missed through the diagnosis, early on until you find the right practitioners who has experience. So I want to say that it's everywhere. That's true. It's hard to escape. But main thing where it concerns the health part is the indoor living space, in your house, in your workspace, and even surprisingly, your car or a rental car.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally have had a client that suffered from mold illness and mold toxicity. And one of the primary sources that we discovered was an issue was actually in their vehicle. They had
Yes.
some spills, kids spilling stuff, getting into some areas, and mold was growing. And so it was affecting them and their family, but it ended up being their vehicle. So interesting that you
Yeah.
brought that
And then
up.
right, right. So I'm glad you were aware of this part, because a lot of the time the vehicles get missed, and you have remediated your living space and you have done whatever at your workspace, but the vehicle wasn't taken care of. And from environmental standpoint, the rule number one is avoidance, right? So you don't want to keep sniffing that master antigen, which we're talking here, mold, because it will keep triggering and take you back to square one rather than progressing forward, with your healing.
Absolutely. So, speaking of square one, I know that you have a personal story and personal experience with mold yourself. Can you share a little bit about your personal journey with mold and what happened and how you actually recovered from that?
Sure, sure. So mold. First of all, I want to just make sure, like, we talk about the outdoor side, right? But the indoor. So mold needs three things to grow. Okay. So first is the food source, which is plenty in any living space. So wood, drywall, fabric, carpet. Okay, any porous material. And so food source is there. Okay, and we don't have a control over that, right? So we talk about control knobs, what's under our control in order to stop that growth of mold, mold spores or mold colonies. And then the second is moisture or humidity, right? The indoor humidity in your house. So mold needs that humidity. And the rule of thumb, which is well known in the mold professionals side, is anything above 50%. Okay, so
Mhm.
55% is what is kind of more a kind of a hard cutoff, okay, for your daily indoor humidity in your home. But 50% is kind of optimal. So you want to, so anytime you have extended periods, 48 to 72 hours above 55% of indoor relative humidity, it propagates that mold to germinate. And then the third is it loves warm environments, so warm, dark, moist areas to grow. And the only control from our standpoint is the humidity. Okay, and specifically if you are along these states, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, right? So these are all very high humid climates. So the outdoor humidity is one thing, but it doesn't mean that if you are in other states where the outdoor humidity is low, that you don't have a problem inside. Okay, so even though, like for example, New Mexico, where the humidity is much lower, relative humidity, but indoor mold is still a concern even in those states. So it's not like, some people say that, hey, I want you to move out of this state because this state gives you high humidity, you're prone to that mold growth indoor, but that doesn't solve the problem, in my opinion.
I 100% agree because we have plumbing indoors, and so there's water running through your walls and under your floors, and it doesn't take much a drip,
So,
and a leak, a little bit of a leak, or it can
right.
even start it in some places as simple as in the edge or the rim of a dryer or a washing
Yeah.
machine that doesn't drain out properly, and so you get some moisture buildup. And yeah,
Right.
it can be anywhere where there's moisture, and so that even includes those
Yeah.
drier states like you had mentioned.
Right, right.
So,
So I'm glad you brought up the commonplaces part, and we can just tackle it really quickly while we are talking about the basic background of the mold. So indoors living space is what we are talking about. That includes your work and workplace. Your office, whether you go work somewhere, okay, or if you have your own clinic, and then your vehicle, right? We talked about. So common places where it can grow is, remember, and Dr. Joshua, you touched on that, right? Any place you have any water intrusion, moisture intrusion, right? So think about, so we can start very first from the laundry room in your house, right? So that is a high humidity area where you're running your washer cycles, okay, and then the washer itself. So most of the front end loader washers, okay, those were known to create a problem. So let's say even if you have the whole house, no issue in terms of mold. I'm just making a hypothetical example,
yeah,
but
yeah,
your washer itself, being a front load washer, was a source itself. Okay, and you
yep,
can smell eventually. So mold canaries can tell you that very quickly, because that those clothes which have been washed in those front load washers over time, it's not going to be in the very first month or 2 months. Over use of, a couple months later, the problem starts. And it's because, because of the gasket around that door, it never
Yep.
dries out. So there's a hidden moisture. So remember, we talked about, you have all the source, enough food source in there, the right environment, and then the moisture is there, so it grows in there. So laundry room, if a mold inspector has visited your space and they missed the washer, yeah, make sure. So that was one thing we had to do, swap it out with the top load washer. So top load washers
Yep.
don't have that problem. Okay, and that was one thing. And then if you move to the kitchen, right, so in kitchen you have your under sink, right? So wherever your plumbing lines go through, so there could be a drip leak. Okay, and the hidden source sometime could be behind that sink vanity, right? Okay, and
Yeah.
then if you move into your living space, okay, so you have, if the any spills, like you mentioned, your carpet, your upholstery, right? And then the blinds, let's say, talking about a window, right? So during winter you have condensation, especially if you have those aluminum windows, right? So they can't, they
Hmm.
from the temperature differential, there's a lot of condensation right at the window sill. So every house has that condensation problem if you have, and there are different materials on the windows which solve that problem. But I'm talking about more than 80% of the homes have that problem, okay.
Right. Yeah.
And then plumbing, wherever, all the bathrooms, wherever your plumbing lines are running through, so any drip leak on the toilets or the bathroom vanity. So, and you will be lucky if you find that as visible spot, but in most instances it's a hidden. So
Oh, yeah.
even in our case, it was behind those vanities where the thing was happening. So it could be initially when the builder's plumber installed that, and there was a slow drip leak which happened over years, and you never found
Mhm.
out. And but your symptoms, started to grow, and mold canaries in a given house would quickly, they will be the first one to complain, even in the living
Yeah.
space, right?
The
Okay,
mold
and then
canaries. I like that.
right, right,
I like
and
that
who,
description. I think I'm a
right, right.
mold canary myself.
Yeah, and that's what I was, until all these symptoms, kind of ran that cascade on my health, right? And then
Yeah.
if you are in those hurricane prone states, right? So
Hmm.
during hurricane, any flooding that comes in, that is a big moisture intrusion right there, right? So it needs to be professionally remediated. And then roof leaks, which happen more often than not, okay? and
Yeah.
people and people don't find it in the attic space, okay? But what happens is, until you see a stain in the ceiling.
Right.
So if you see a stain in the ceiling, for sure, but stain takes a little bit longer time to be visible, okay?
Yep.
So beware of, the any of the roof leak scenario. And then I think I forgot to mention while we were in the kitchen part, so refrigerator ice maker, okay?
Yeah.
So I have a personal experience where I was at a friend's place, and he poured me a water out of the refrigerator, the water dispenser, and it has some black stuff floating in it. And I asked him, like, man, that water doesn't look clean. Are you sure that this is the water you drink and I should be drinking? I was like, he's like, yeah, we had that ice maker broke down and all, and it's doing this fudgy thing in it. And I told him that I know that you don't have a health concern. You're not a mold canary, but I am. So at that time, I was a mold canary. I say, hey, this is a mold issue. You either need to get this ice maker part fixed or swap out the refrigerator, just like we did. Went to a basic, refrigerator which has no water dispensing, no ice dispensing, and have a separate
Yeah.
standalone ice maker just for that. Okay,
Right.
so that way you eliminate. So my philosophy is to you eliminate the sources, right? So that was one thing. So
Absolutely.
now, so if people walk into your kitchen and they're like, hey, you have the old style refrigerator, it's done for purpose. It's not that I didn't want the top of the line refrigerator in the kitchen. It's just that from health standpoint, wherever I could remove any source of moisture intrusion, that's what's going to be my priority, okay.
Absolutely.
And then basement crawl spaces, that's where, so we don't have
Oh,
that
yeah.
in some states, but wherever it exists, you have moisture transfer through the cement and walls, okay. And then high humidity is already present, right? So it's a
Oh, right.
perfect. And then
Yeah.
last but not the least, okay, which every home has it, every workspace has it, okay, is your HVAC system. Okay, so in
Right.
the HVAC system, most of the HVAC system, whether in the commercial building or homes, are initially designed by builder, right? So builder, and eventually you just swapping coils, for your cooling side. But what happens is these, so nobody, like when you're buying a personal home, or you got it built, you go to the design center, you're picking all the interior options and all, but nobody pays attention to the HVAC system. Even if I put you on the spot, like Dr. Joshua, did you go to the design center to pick and choose, hey, how many tonnage of on the downstairs or upstairs if you have a two-story home, or what components of the HVAC or indoor air quality components? Nobody does that, right? Until
Right.
you have gone through all that. So what happens is so when it's done by the builder side, they cut corners, right? So then what happens is most of these supply vents, okay, they have leaky ducts, and what happens is you have cold air going through inside and you have hot attic. So I'm talking about mostly, the ducts running through the attic space. So you have moisture condensation because the attic is a warm
Right.
air, you cold. So whenever you have that, it condenses, right? So what I
That's
see
right.
is, and you will see, so sometimes you will be lucky, you will see visible black mold on those vents, supply vents, okay?
Hmm.
But in our case, everything was invisible, it was all hidden. But we did find the HVAC issue where we had to swap out some of the ducts and some of those vents in order
Hmm.
to fully remediate. Because if you have it in the HVAC system, imagine if those mold spores are going throughout the whole house.
That's
It's
right.
not,
It's just
it's
spreading it
not
all over. Right.
it's not an isolated problem, right? It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's basically, so and then that's one house side. But even in the commercial building, so in my 20 years of work, I used to, so when I was not a mold cannery, I was fine in those areas until the immune system just kind of, or you can say that the detox system gave up, right? So in the
Right. Yeah.
environmental medicine practitioners, which I worked with also in my health journey, they use a term called total toxic barrel, right? So until my barrel just totally fill up, on the detox organs, that's when I became a mold cannery, right? Man, I'm reacting to everything now. So even in the workspace, I had this issue, and the issue was always when I go to the kitchen. So where they have all your coffee machine, your sink,
Right.
and your
Yeah.
refrigerator, and then in the offices where there was a condensation issue. Okay, so and most of those happen to be the conference rooms where you are in a meeting where you're helping the team making some big decisions on the different projects around the world. And I'm like sniffing this thing and running weird symptoms and all. So yeah, so HVAC, never ignore the HVAC system, because what happens is, we're going to touch it later, but mold inspectors are not licensed to come and inspect your HVAC system. So you need somebody who is aware of that from the mold inspection standpoint, so that they bring along with them a licensed
Yeah.
HVAC professional who can open up that supply plenum, okay, and look closely, visually inspect your supply vents, up from the attic, not just from the indoor space, but up in the attic, so they can look for those sign of condensation, any leaky ducts and whatnot. And that's where most of the hidden sources are. Because like I said,
Absolutely.
visible mold, I will consider, call yourself lucky if you find that visible spot easy to remediate. The toughest
Yep.
challenge is hidden mold.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your personal journey with mold. Like, when did you first start experiencing symptoms and signs, and what was your journey like? How did you discover that that was an issue for you?
Oh, so just like everyone else, it took a while, right? So with my work, I used to travel around the world quite a bit, and international, mostly international, some domestic, and I was totally fine, totally healthy individual. I would see my primary care practitioner once a year, annual physical exam. They'll draw blood, and sometimes the urine sample, and only thing would be vitamin D deficient, and they'll give you that vitamin D prescription. You take it, and then you check back in
Hmm.
2 months or so. Hey, it came back up. You're good to go until next year, right? So what happened was, so this is when I was not a mold cannery, okay, and so I went for a hurricane cleanup. Okay, so this was back in 2017, where a hurricane hit the areas in Texas. Okay,
And
so
you're
so
in the Houston area, right?
right. So
Yeah.
so it hit, and the areas, so our area was not impacted, but the communities where it hit really hard, So at at the work they said, hey, take this time to help out your coworkers, clean up, with the cleanup, whatever help they need, and be part of the team and go, because what happens is when it happens as a hurricane event, you will see whether it's Florida, Texas, Louisiana, you have resource scarcity, right? So anybody
Right.
who can volunteer to help, they jump on. But here's where my
Yeah.
word of caution, okay? So I'll say this word: don't donate your body, donate supplies or financial help, because I didn't know that I was a mold cannery, right? So I went, and man, we're wearing N95 mask and Tyvek suit and taking precautions, whatever, gloves and all, helping, kind of demo down those homes which were impacted, and these were coworkers. And right on day, so I went on day one, right? Totally fine. Day two, day three, I'm starting to get weird symptoms, really weird symptoms. Pain on the back, headache. So I'll still call it headache, but this is on the back of the head. Okay.
Yeah.
And then my urine frequency went crazy at that time. And I was like,
Yep.
man, what happened? And then you're dehydrating, so you chug more water, and then it's like, man, it's a nonstop. And then from third night onward, I could not fall asleep. So insomnia, right? So difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, and then my energy levels were dipping through the afternoon, right? And it's like, man, I
Yep.
was totally fine. I never had to be on coffee entire afternoon like a lot of the people in the corporate world have to be. And I was like, man, just no caffeine was required for me. But then all of a sudden I became so dependent on it to kind of push myself through the afternoon meetings, or even for work, right? And this is when we used to have 5-day work week, not the hybrid. Now world has changed. So I was like, man, something is wrong, right? But I still
Yeah.
kept pushing my body and helped those whatever homes that I had committed to be part of those teams. And then I started, so okay, so those, and then sinuses. So my sinuses were congesting really bad, and I was not doing any sinus cleanses at that time because I was following conventional medicine, right? And
Right.
then,
Yeah.
man, so then what happens, so with all these kind of these symptoms, so sinuses, and then even ears were feeling plugged up, like something is, and then I had these weird static shocks. I'm getting static shocks everywhere. And I was like, man, all these, and then tingling, numbness, various, so that's again a nervous system imbalance there. So then I started looking at, so I went to the primary care doctor. He said, I'm going to run some testing, just basic blood work and some urine analysis, and everything came normal. And he said, hey, but I was telling him, and then I started having gut issues, right? You have your bloating, you're sensitive to some foods which you were not before. And all of these started to kind of make me throw off totally, like, man, I need to focus on this. So then I stayed within the conventional medicine, but I went to the specialist, right? So GI doctor, right? ENT doctor for this. Then I had a couple of times hearing tests done because there's like constant ringing going on. And then even I had to go to cardiologist, right, for getting, because there was
Right.
always an elevated blood pressure, which I never had an issue before, never. Okay, so
Right.
now I'm able to say that it was the hurricane which kind of triggered, was a massive trigger, but I didn't know
Yeah.
back then. I did
Right.
not
Oh,
know back then,
absolutely. Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so because I thought we were taking all those precautionary measure, and let me tell you, N95 does not do anything to mycotoxins, nothing. Those are zero point 0.1 micron size. They go in and out. Basically, they're laughing at the
Right.
mask, like, man, you can't do anything to us, right? So it was like that. And then from conventional, I went to other fields of medicine that you mentioned in the beginning of in the introduction, right? So I went, so from conventional, when I basically tried every specialist, and I'm like, man, they're not able to figure out with the whatever tools they have there at their disposal. I quickly knew that I need to go outside, and I'm starting to look up, going to homeopathic, traditional naturopathic doctors, then the biological dentistry, right? And then I went to one. So, and then I came to know about functional medicine also, right? So I explored that side. So I went to a functional medicine doctor. This was IFM, Institute of Functional Medicine trained doctor,
Yep.
and an MD. Okay, and so she did basic, like everybody does, a lot of lab testing. And she's like, you got a lot of gut, so like a stool test predicted a lot of dysbiosis, because that's where they
Yeah.
typically start. Let's heal and seal your gut. You leaking, dealing with leaky gut. So I was like, okay, wherever you want to start. And then she put me on an elimination diet to help out with the food sensitivities, right? So 3 weeks you're eliminating all those common allergens, and I did that, and I lost weight, and I was like, hey, this is what probably I needed, right? So basically that was the first time in 5 years I felt like, hey, I'm hitting the right track for the health.
Yeah.
uh, but then what happened? So mold was still not picked up by functional medicine. Okay. So then what happened was, so I had my 6 month follow up, let's say. Okay. So this was in
Hmm.
2018. Okay. So 2017, I did the hurricane cleanup and all, and over just a year, I had seen so many doctors. And then
Yeah.
so I went for my follow up, and I got a call. So let's say on the day of the follow up, they're like, doctor is not available, so we have to reschedule, right? So it got rescheduled to like a month later. And then 2 weeks later, we got the email that everybody pray for the doctor. She is dealing with some illness which doctors have no clue. And so we all, as a client at that time, or patient for that doctor, we all started praying, sending our thoughts. And then I had my follow up, and I asked her, because nobody wanted to publish, their, what they were dealing with. And she told me, she said, Harmeet, we need to check mold in you, because she lost 25 pounds of weight in 3 weeks.
Oh
Okay.
my goodness.
That was her trigger. So I never lost weight. I was at the opposite. I gained weight. So so weight,
Yep.
so it could go either way.
It
Weight
can.
gain,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
you could be on
Hmm.
the same diet that you have been, and you're doing the exercise, but now you're gaining weight for no reason.
Yep.
And same thing,
Absolutely.
and you could lose a lot of weight. And I think it is tied to the type of toxic mold mycotoxins, which you got exposed to. And so she ran that panel on me, and boom, well, urine mycotoxin panel. And some of the mycotoxins we'll talk about later were off the chart. And she said, hey, you were in the same boat. Now we have to run your whole test your home. So there was an army dust sample that I bought from
Hmm.
her, and I collected the dust from living space upstairs, downstairs, two separate samples, and it didn't come that bad. Okay. So she said, hey, you're getting exposed from either your work or your car. And so I had to
Yeah.
check on that. But then then the thing was, I was still getting exposed every single day from work. Okay. Car was not a problem. So car was not a problem for me, but work was a bigger issue. So work every single day, 5 days a week. So what happens is so the most important thing for recovery is, like, remember I said, avoidance. So if you can't do anything about your work, wherever you are an employee, but for your living space where your body is going to recover, remember we say rest and digest, right, to heal.
Yeah.
So during your sleep hours, so let's say 8 hours sleep or 6 to 8, whatever you're getting, that living space, your bedroom, must be free of any toxic mold and mycotoxins exposure. Because if you're sniffing in
Absolutely.
through that, you could be on any amount of detox binders or whatever antioxidants. There is no way you're going to be able to pull that out. Because think of those capsules of whatever 500 milligram. You could put as many in your body, but you can't compete against the volume of air that you're breathing in, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and remember I told you that the workspace always have issues in the HVAC system. So HVAC
Hmm.
system are kind of the lungs of the house, or the lungs of your commercial building where you work at. So that's a massive, massive influx than those binders, right? So
Absolutely.
I got put on conventional binders at that time, and those were, what do you call those? Not
Oh,
active, not bioactive carbon technology,
so
but
usually it'd
basically
be like
spent
activated
carbon.
charcoal.
Yeah, yeah. So activated charcoal, bentonite
Hmm.
clay. Then I had chlorella, and then I had a prescription one, Welcol. Some people
Yeah.
use
Some people use
polystyrene.
cholestyrene. Yeah.
Right,
Hmm.
right. So that's the prescription version too. And then some fiber, okay, glucomannan fiber. So I was on 5 different binders, which had to be taken 2 hours away from meals twice daily. And you have to slowly up your dose, because if you immediately did it, man, you Hirschsprungs, which I assume your audience are familiar with. So Hersheimer reaction, and then man, you will be feeling worse than what you're trying to bind, right? So,
Right.
but here's what was the problem, Dr. Joshua. So when I was on those binders, they were trying to flush whatever mycotoxins they were finding, but at that same time they were stealing nutrients from the body, being conventional
Absolutely.
binders, right? So
Right.
then we would run. So then we ran, a follow up on all these nutrient deficiency, your stool test, your urine test,
Hmm.
and they were coming, man, you are still deficient in those B vitamins, zinc and then glutathione and all, I mean, all other master antioxidants. So basically, I'm talking about running organic acid test panel, GI map, which was the test, the practitioner used on me at that time, and then your urine mycotoxin testing, and then some SpectraCell nutri eval, right? So basically,
Yeah.
so it was more of a nutrient deficiency, like, man, let's keep it. So I kept doing that for like almost 4 years. I was on conventional binders, and because I was still constantly getting exposed, so every time we repeat the urine mycotoxin panel, it will show less, but it was never out, right?
Yeah.
So I
Never.
was in a
Yeah.
constant,
Never coming down enough. Right.
never coming down. It's like, man, it's just flipping, like, hey, you didn't have these 6 before, now you have these other 4, depending on which lab you're talking about. So real time lab is another mycotoxin panel lab, which is urine based mycotoxin testing. And then the another one was Great Plain Labs, now it's Mosaic Diagnostic. So those were the two which, at that time. So basically then what happened was, I was like, man, and over that time, while it was just mold, because my symptoms, I became chemically sensitive to all
Yeah.
all chemicals. Like, I could not be around people wearing perfumes, right?
Perfume.
and,
Hmm.
and
Yep.
I couldn't be in the mall, for example, these highly rubber stores like Crocs, okay, or shoes, because I could sniff. So my nose became like a dog's nose. We could sniff from miles. Like, man, what's going on? And I was a totally normal person, right? So, and the conventional guys could not figure out what was wrong, but on the functional side, but the homeopathic, so homeopathic fixed up my sinuses. Okay. So that's where I love that, because in homeopathy, they have these diluted concentrations where
Yep.
they could heal your sinuses much quicker than sinus rinses with some antifungal solutions in it. Because so then what happened was, so during that same time, I worked with so many practitioners because these symptoms were sending me all over the place, right?
Oh
So,
yeah.
and then what happened? So then in 2022, I was like, man, I'm gonna take this own health, my own health in my own hands and become my own doctor, right? So what happened was, that same functional medicine practitioner, she said, she came to know about parasites could be a problem, right? So she said, hey, we have worked on mold and you're not fully recovered, and I know you have seen these other doctors, which is great, because I even went to osteopathy. I think I probably didn't mention that, because one thing was, for mold canaries or sensitive people, you need limbic system retraining, so your vagal response, dorsal, ventral, right? So your vagal tone is
Hmm.
all messed up, and they do very soft manipulative, manipulations on your body to bring you back and rest, so that you're not in constant fight or flight mode, and that helped.
Yeah.
But I was still reacting to mold everywhere. I was worse mold canary than I started, right? So, and then I came to and then at that time, so the best parasite cleanse, as you and I know, was Cellcore, and so she
Yes.
said, you need to take these parasite products and you will be. So at that time, their website was not logged for practitioners, okay, because now it's all practitioner focused, and you
Right.
can
Yeah.
only get your
Absolutely.
products through practitioners. So, and I was like,
Yeah.
hey, so I used the account of the practitioner who was my practitioner, right? And I downloaded everything from their website, and I'm starting to learn, as a chemical engineer, and their products have a lot of chemistry tied to it, okay, biochemistry
Yeah.
tied to
Absolutely.
it, because they energize your mitochondrial health, right? So they have those, which feed the electron transport chain, right? So all those, biochemical phenomenons in your body at the cellular level. And I understood all that, and I got excited. I was like, man, you know what, I'm just going to order this particular protocol and run through, because they are guiding me through every kit. So I did that, and man, that was a game changer. Okay, so I ran that through, and then my issues were going down like very quickly as I was progressing from each phase, right? But then when
Right.
it was but then when it was left over, so I came to know a traditional naturopath, and then I was at the conference last year, and I met some of the master muscle testers, and I was like, hey, I've done that, whatever products you offer, but there's some still missing link. Would you mind muscle testing me? I had not learned muscle testing yet, and this guy Jimmy, you probably know him, and
Jimmy
he muscle
Scaringi.
tested.
Yeah.
Yeah, he muscle tested me right there, and he's a very busy man. And he tested me.
Yes.
We didn't know each other, and I just approached to him, just to introduce myself that I have been a mold cannery. Your products helped me a lot, but there's still something remaining. And he's like, hey, you know what? Let's muscle test you. And he gave me a time window, and I showed up to see him, and he immediately did it in 5 minutes. And he said, you still have certain high priority parasites, and guess where they are logged in your kidneys and your liver. Okay, so what are those? We call drainage
Yep.
channels. So if your drainage is
Absolutely.
blocked, there's no way you can get things out, right? So I became mold cannery because mold suppressed your immune system. So all these other things, parasite, candida, bacteria, which is all your dysbiosis, everything could start to flourish. And then, so basically, when he said that and then he gave me a protocol. He said, hey, celebrate after this, right? And man, that was a moment of celebration because I passed out a lot of those over next 3 weeks, which was still remaining. I had passed a lot during the protocol, but then these remaining,
Yes.
which were causing. And guess what? The moment those got flushed out, I was not reacting to mold. Okay, anywhere. Basically, the same
Praise the Lord.
workspace.
Yeah.
If I could go in, I was not. So basically, what I'm saying is, so my message is, if you were never a mold cannery and you became a mold cannery like me, you are not doomed forever. You are not doomed forever. Okay, that's the key takeaway.
Absolutely.
Your body could be fixed even though you have those genetic predispositions like MTHFR methylation, variant, or the COMT gene, so basically any genetic disposition, your body could still be made to tolerate, like my body was tolerating those things before. So we just had to
Absolutely.
work. So it's never. So my message is, there is never one cause, okay, for your chronic.
100% agree.
It's
Yeah.
multiple causes. So that's why in my
Yeah.
practice I never use the word root cause medicine, because it's root causes. There's
Root
multiple.
causes. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So causes, so I always correct somebody when I run into, like, hey, I'm the root cause guy. And I'm like, no, man,
Yeah.
I thought mold was the only thing in my health,
Yes.
right? Until I
I
opened
have,
up that box of, so it was basically went down the rabbit hole, and man, there's everything, parasites, heavy metals, okay, bacteria, viruses, retroviruses, you name it, man. So it was
oh,
loaded up,
yeah.
radioactive elements. I'm like, man, and
Have,
from my work history, it was clear that, hey, I have been exposed to all those things everywhere. Not just from my work history, but even in people's home, all the chemicals that you're using. You're on the driving on the freeway, sniffing in all those fumes from the highway, or I happen to be in a place where those hurricanes show up, and you don't know what they bring in the flooded water, right? So that was kind of my
absolutely.
personal journey. And after seeing those 43 practitioners, then in the end, kind of learning muscle testing and then those foundational medicine principles, I was like, man, I should have done foundational medicine first, and then apply the functional medicine. So in my practice now, I use both of those, and then my learning from these other fields of medicine, because every field of medicine helped me. Okay, but what was
Absolutely.
but what was a game changer was foundational medicine. That was a game changer.
Absolutely.
Because
I
that's when
100% agree.
I realized, man, it was not just mold. So when people claim that, man, I'm a mold specialist, I tell them that, man, that's only one trigger. It's a major trigger, but it's just one of them. Wait until you find out what else is there. So
Absolutely.
that's why I progress my clients through the guided detox as we are, and then I deal with sensitive clients, like, because I was sensitive, right? So that's kind of,
Yes.
I'm sorry if I took a little bit longer to go through the personal journey, but the reason I say this out is because a lot of people then are able to resonate, and then they say, hey, you're not alone, and keep the hope, healing is possible. Okay.
Absolutely. And I just want to say that I feel like so many of the very best practitioners out there are
Hmm.
practitioners that became who they were because of their own story, whether that's trying to help a family member, a wife, or a child that's struggling with some type of chronic health issue. And then
Right.
that just spurs them on towards learning more and trying to seek answers, or whether that's their own issues, seeking to
Yeah.
try to, okay, look,
You
I'm not getting
so,
where I know I can be. And
right.
so
So
that's
so
one of the
so
things that really came across is your passion for what you do, because like you said, you
so
knew that you could get well. And I think that was such a great motivator for you to keep going and keep searching. And then
right.
also, you found it. You found the answer, and it's not one answer.
Yeah, it's multiple, so yeah,
Getting
so
that
it's
burden, that toxic burden,
right.
emptying the barrel. You talked about the toxic barrel. I use a bucket analogy, kind of the same idea,
Same idea, right?
lowering that. Yeah, absolutely. Getting that
Yeah.
burden out of your
So,
body so it can drain, so it can make energy, so it can do the things. And
so, so think, so
it's
think,
designed to heal itself. We just got to get rid of the obstacles.
absolutely, very well said, Dr. Joshua. So that's what. So with my 40 years of all that gunk sitting in my body, it
Yeah.
took time to clear out all those things. So it's not a straight line. Healing is not a straight line. Okay,
No.
it's up and down. So some people, after listening to this conversation or other podcasts, they think, man, hey, the guy gave name of these bunch of supplements, because that's what I used to do. Okay, when I was self-exploring, like, man, this guy said take this XYZ supplement if you're dealing with
Yeah.
mold, and you jump on those, and then you realize, man, you have like 30, 40 supplements that you're taking every time of the day or so. Yeah, because at one time, so I didn't go that, what do you call, I mean, basically on self exploring, I didn't started to load up on supplements, but the functional medicine practitioners, which is typical, that going by the different lab markers, they start adding, hey, here's, take this, take this, take this.
Yep.
And I was taking 38 supplements at breakfast, 10 at lunch, and about 28 at dinner. Okay.
Oh, you
And
didn't
just,
even need to
just,
eat
just
food.
imagine how many bottles you have to open and put caps. And I had to do a 1 week, what do you call, a stock up, those
Yeah.
pill containers, right? Those boxes, and you load it up. And then so that was itself a kind of a time consuming for every week, like do it on Sunday for next week and all that. But
Right.
now
Yeah.
after their foundational medicine, man, I don't need that many. Even if I muscle test those or learn a lab, because my body is not now deficient in so many things, because we cleared those critters or infections which were causing those deficiencies. So you remember, even at the recent conference, right? And I mean, you meet with amazing practitioners at ECO every year, and even other conferences that you attend, right? And now the
Yes.
common theme on foundational is, it's not the deficiency, it's the toxicity which is driving the deficiency in your body. Okay, so
Absolutely.
that's where the functional medicine and the foundational medicine kind of a little bit differ from each other. One still
Yep.
thinks it's the deficiency of the nutrient, so you need to load up on supplements whichever testing is showing. But the foundation say, hey, no, let's clear out the infections, okay, the pathogenic infections and the toxins, and then see if your body still need those. And I am a perfect example, not just me, my son, my wife, and daughter. They, I mean, I had to put them on a lot of supplements at that time from their practitioners, so they were working with
Hmm.
same. And then I found different pediatric ones, and they were loading up also on them. And then my wife was the one who pointed out to me, like, Harmeet, are you sure that it seems like you're taking more supplements and eating less food, like your body is more dependent on supplement. So it's, and then I coined the term green pharmacy. So basically I was like, yeah, I moved away from conventional medicine prescriptions, and now I'm on just green pharmacy with a bunch of supplements, right? So you got the idea, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yep.
basically there are three things, so as for foundational medicine: diet, okay, highly processed ingredients, or all those preservatives and adders in your food, right? So diet, toxins, and pathogens. And then
Absolutely.
fourth is my adder is your environment, right? Like we're talking over
Hmm.
here, mold. So those are the four pillars that I work on everybody's health, and it comes out so beautifully. So every client, once they work on these four pillars, right? You work on the detox, you clear up the diet, fix the diet, fix the food sensitivities, because most of the time people have been consuming food they have been very sensitive to without knowing, right?
They don't know.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, so when you work on all those pillars and change the, so nutrition, lifestyle changes, supplements, man, body, like you said, it just is waiting for those things to heal itself, you know and
Absolutely.
that's what I experienced, my whole family experienced, and then all the clients, I take them through the same experience. So that's why, like you mentioned in the beginning, right? So that's where, after fixing myself and my whole family, uh, the calling came, like, man,
Hmm.
you need to now help others, right? So that's how I got started, so I'll just wrap it up there in terms of personal journey, okay.
Well, I wanted to quickly touch on a couple other things, and then I want to get into some, um, just some ideas, some practical applications, so to speak, for the
Sure.
listener or the viewer. But I find, and I'm sure you found this as well, and you've been to more practitioners than I have, but I feel like
Mhm.
in conventional medicine, there's still those practitioners that are dismissing mold or they dismissed mycotoxins as a potential cause of illness. Why do you think that they're so dismissive as of mold and mycotoxins? And what have you found personally, and what do you think the science is showing about that?
Yeah, so some of the science we have already covered in our conversation so far,
Yeah,
right? But
you're right.
but to but to answer your question on the conventional side, because that was the first healthcare everybody goes to, like I did.
Mhm.
So, because what happens is the symptoms of mold toxicity, mold illness, overlap with so many conditions. So they
You're
overlap with
right.
so many conditions. So if they start going and picking your symptoms and tying it to a diagnosis, it's very challenging to diagnose that, right? So
Yep.
it's basically the way they are trained. It's kind of, the environmental medicine doctors, it's in their wheelhouse. They have known about this for decades, right? But if you go to the conventional guys, the way they are trained, and plus the lack of awareness, so those will be the two things I would say, that the overlapping symptoms. So they have hard time to kind of make connection, okay. And but the science now is clear. The medical literature, it's all published from environmental medicine, doctors, and I saw some of them. Okay, so they were also proposing some treatment plans, which I took some of them, and that's where I came to know that it's not something totally new, because like I thought that, hey,
No.
it's only the functional medicine, doctors back in that time when I was dealing with my health issues,
Hmm.
that I thought they were the only one who were aware of this. But the environmental
Right.
practitioner medicine specialists, they had figured this all out, and there were a couple of clinics which I at that time wanted to go in person and visit them. But those were like, you have to be there 3 weeks, and they would put you through different, regime of treatment, and you have to stay there and all that. So, and then so that's basically, on the conventional. But the science is clear that mold and mycotoxins are a master antigen, okay, and they basically trigger a systemic inflammation, okay.
That's right. So
And systemic inflammation, it's not just, like, hey, so you remember those conventional binders, they focus only on the gut, they're
yeah,
cleaning out
yeah, they
the
don't leave
gut,
the gut. They stay in the gut.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's systemic. Okay, so just
That's right.
imagine, you sniff mycotoxins through your sinuses right here. Okay, and your pituitary gland, which is your master hormone, right, controller, it
Hmm.
immediately causes all those hormonal imbalances. You deal with neurocognitive issues, right? So it's the olfactory right here. Okay, so and then once it's in the brain, right, signaling, then you have all kind of issues. Your cortisol, adrenal glands gave up. So it's not just, gut issues, it's systemic. And so the science is clear now than it was before, and I'm glad that a lot of practitioners are now, have the awareness, and in their intake questionnaires they're including these questions to kind of get an idea about the client living space, before they run all the advanced labs on them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
and
great.
I hope that this knowledge could be transferred back to the conventional side also, so at least they can say that, hey, I'm going to refer you out to this XYZ person because this is outside my wheelhouse, so
Yeah.
you remember, like, I think it was Dr. Watts, I think at the recent eco, I loved when he said that, hey, let's collaborate, like
Yeah.
all these different fields of medicine, like the fields of medicine that I mentioned, and then with the foundational medicine, let's collaborate. Like he said, he gave a beautiful analogy, like the dealerships. they're all next to each other, right?
Yeah.
So it's basically, you go to the conventional, you say, hey, next door is the functional guy, and the functional will say, hey, say the next door is the foundational guy, and the foundational will say, hey, you may benefit from the energy medicine practitioner, and the energy one sends you to the homeopathic. So basically we collaborate rather than saying, man, this guy's going to snatch my clients or this clients, so basically collaborate. And because they're not that many to help, those millions of people who go through these chronic illnesses, so they're not enough of us, basically, right?
I totally agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thanks for joining us for part 1 of the Harmeet Singh interview as we discuss mold, mycotoxins, and mold-related illness. Join us next week for part 2 as we conclude this discussion on mold and mold illness with some practical tips and guidelines for helping to heal yourself from mold illness. Thanks for tuning in to the Discover Health podcast. Remember, your health is a journey, not a destination. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next week.